Centering in. Your eyes closed or softly gazing just in front of you. Focusing your attention on Focusing your attention on your breath. Simply noticing the rhythm of your inhale and exhale. Letting that gentle wall of sound wash over you, wash in you. And knowing that within just a few breaths, our individual breath rhythm, in and out, they sync up together, they entrain with each other, reminding us of our interconnectedness. So sense your body supported, grounding in by sensing all of those places where your back is touching a chair, noticing where you're sitting, and letting your hands fall open to receive. Sensing your palms, the backs of your fingers, your whole hand. Resting on your lap or at your side. And sense now your left hand. Sense your whole left hand, the back of it, the fingers, the palm. And into that hand, visualize placing a fear. One of those things that might bring you to angst or anger, sadness. And feel it hovering just over your hand. Grief sits here with me in my hand. Fear sits here with me. Sorrow sits here with me in my hand. Anger sits here. Righteous indignation sits here in my hand. Feel that emotion gently in the palm of your left hand. And now sense your whole right hand. The back of your hand, your fingers, the openness at your palm. And visualize placing a moment you have felt great love, where you have felt trust, peace, forgiveness, joy. Feel it too hovering just over your hand. Joy sits here with me in my hand. Loving kindness sits here with me. Trust sits here with me. Peace sits here. Forgiveness sits here. Feel those emotions, that emotion, sitting gently now in the palm of your right hand. And now bring your hands slowly together in front of your heart, palms facing each other, but not quite touching. Sense the energy there. The paradox of being able to hold both, to sense both. The fear and the love, the sorrow and the joy, the anxiety and peace. And now breathing in and out, connect to everyone in this room or watching who may in this very moment be experiencing whatever arose in you. And feel yourself connected in this space. Now widen your awareness to include all those experiencing these emotions in this city, in our state, in our country, in all places around the world, anywhere and everywhere. And feel your connection, your shared human experience. Feel our connection to our more than human beings in all creation, and know that you are not alone. Imagine loving, loving, love. And so it is. Thank you. All day I replayed these words. Is this the path of love? Amazing how quickly 6 words become compass, the new lens through which to see myself in the world. I notice what the question is not. Not, is this right? Not, is this wrong? All day, I let myself be led by the question. All day, I let myself not be too certain of the answer. Is this the path of love? That's an excerpt from a poem I've shared before, The Question by Rosemary Watola Tromer. So what does love ask? As we hold all of those things in our hands, in our hearts, in our lives, knowing that every person alive, now and forever, and in the future, will experience all of those human emotions. What does love ask of us? Here's how the gospel attributed to Mark answers that. The other Mark. It is a good gospel. One of the scribes came near and heard the Sadducees disputing with one another. We like to dispute with one another. And seeing that Jesus answered them well, he asked him, "Which commandment is the first of all?" Jesus answered, "The first is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." Then the scribe said to him, "You are right, teacher. You have truly said that he is one, and beside him there is no other. And to love him with all the heart, with all the understanding, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself, this is much more important than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." After that, no one dared to ask him any question. Diana Butler Bass describes a conversation about this passage. She says, "Yesterday at the hotel where I'm staying in Minneapolis, I was talking with another guest. She asked what I was doing in the city. I replied that I was preaching this weekend at a Methodist church. She didn't run away. That's good. And instead asked, 'What are you preaching?' 'The reading is a great one this week,' I exclaimed happily." Diana exclaimed happily. "Perfect for the weekend before this election. Love your neighbor as yourself." She laughed. "Good thought. The world would be better if everybody did that." She paused and added, "But what if your neighbor is an axe murderer?" Diana replied, "An axe murderer? I was thinking about my neighbor with the leaf blower, or the one who recently put up a security light that shines in my bedroom. I can't say I love those neighbors." She goes on, "I suspect that's why no one dared to ask Jesus any questions after Jesus made this neighbor comment. Loving your neighbor is the most important, most beautiful, most ethically obvious biblical thing to proclaim. That's Jesus' central teaching. And it is nearly impossible to live because we can all immediately think of exceptions to the rule." I felt like Diana Butler Bass got into my head and pulled those words right out. So who are your exceptions to the rule? I heard a couple hmms in the room. I like it when what made me squirm is also going to make you squirm a little. Again, that's why we show up here. I had a conversation this week with a young woman in her mid-30s. Her dad has a very different worldview than she does. And after listening to him on the phone one afternoon in a particularly charged rant about those people, she had to remind him, "I am those people, Dad. I am those people." She went on to recount holidays growing up, where that extended family gathering happily included the turkey and the mashed potatoes and lots of conversation that might have gotten lively, but where the abiding love and connection in their family was the focus, not what felt like what divided them. That has changed in that family and in many in these polarizing days. So my response at listening to her, grief at her sadness, and then my own flare of righteous indignation at those people and their divisive rhetoric. Thank you again for the shared. Diana Butler Bass goes on to say, the biblical response, the deeply spiritual response to this teaching is silence. That teaching that says, love your neighbors as yourself. The followers of Jesus don't try to interpret Jesus' command or dim its challenge. Instead, followers of Jesus let these clear, simple words call us to live in such a loving fashion that we eventually learn that we ourselves can be part of the problem when we seek a truly neighborly world. Silence. The deep recognition of our own complicity in the challenge of loving our neighbors shouldn't keep us from the moral calling to do so. Indeed, silence compels us to reach beyond the limits of our hidden bigotries and quiet hatreds to act on Jesus' command. Love God with your whole heart and mind and understanding, and love your neighbor. Valerie Kaur, who the Social Justice Committee is reading right now, in an interview on the daily reflections from the Center for Activism and Contemplation, says this: what does it mean to return to a kind of wholeness where the way that we love informs what we do in the world, and what we do in the world deepens our love? Is this the path of love? As much as we must fight for our convictions and stand for what is just, remember that after Election Day or Inauguration Day, we have to find a way to live together still. The only way we will birth a multiracial democracy is if we hold up a vision of a future that leaves no one behind. Not even those we consider our worst opponents. Philosopher Hannah Arendt says, isolation breeds radicalization. You might be the person to puncture the social media algorithm, to sit in spaces of deep listening. She reminds us that we have to create those spaces. And that means listening over time, listening in relationship, letting ourselves really wonder why beneath the slogans and the sound bites, and listening to another person's story, seeing another person's wound, seeing their grief, their rage. We might not agree with each other on what causes grief and rage, but we all experience it. And so she invites us to remember that there are no such things as monsters in the world. Only human beings who are wounded, who act out of their fear or insecurity or rage. That does not make them any less dangerous, but once we see their wound, they lose their power over us. And we get to ask ourselves, how do we want to take that information into what we do next? Is this the path of love? Love, as a Unity friend recently reminded me, can be a really difficult word. It is so overused as to sometimes lose its meaning. There is the love we feel for those who are intimately on the inside of our lives, a partner, a friend, a grandbaby, beloved community. But love is more than those relationships. Love, with some muscles behind it, is a way of showing up in the world. It's a way of reminding ourselves to deeply listen to our own truth, spoken in love, to boundaries that we need for health and well-being. But love in the public sphere invites us into relationship beyond our comfort zone. Love your neighbor. It's all about love is more than a little line on our banner proclaiming our values. We warmly welcome all. We listen to Spirit. We embrace diversity. We walk our talk with integrity. We're compassionate. We're joyful. We practice sacred service and we claim spiritual abundance. Love your neighbor. Vote your conscience. Do your homework. Ask questions. And listen. Listen in that silence that invites us to love beyond our comfort zone, to love beyond what color we're going to wear to the polls on Tuesday, what calls us beyond this week and every day into a way of being in the world where we are living our values, where we are alive in love. Valerie Cower reminds her readers that inviting people to take our own wounds and those we consider our opponents into a space of reimagination, of imagining an outcome, a policy, a relationship that leaves no one outside our circle of care, not even them. This kind of labor, this kind of revolutionary love is not the sacrifice of an individual, although I would say it needs each of us as individuals to say yes to that. It is a practice of community. That's why we come here. The inside job and the practice of it in community. We say yes to showing up as love in all of the ways love asks us in our individual bubbly membranes. And then in community, we remember what it is to be love in the world. And so, my beloved community, I'm going to share a poem that I wrote after one by Rosemary Watola Tromer that she wrote called Dear America. Dear America, I am your daughter. I have lived in your cities and small towns, walked your beaches, hiked your hills. My ancestors came to your shores hungry for hope, believing a dream, a promise. My uncle left his life back on those other shores at 19 in a war that did not end all wars. I have taught your children and cared for your elders. I have raised my voice and rolled up my sleeves. I love you, America. You have made me. Love the dream of you. Love you despite how that dream has been a nightmare for too many. I love that my vote is my voice, and that is not the end of the song, but only a beginning. And once again, the waking dream calls me to listen to the voice I hear in my dreams. The future's children calling me, hungry for peace, hungry for hope, hungry for a promise. And so it is. Amen.